So so you can see that I started out mainly in the world of voice, of singing and opera, and then I had 6 months off the opera one year and thought, what am I going to do? I've always wanted to study massage. I did one course, I was totally hooked. And then as I went through and discovered myofascial release, I realised, light bulb moment, I could actually combine these two worlds and help singers and help people with voice disorders. So here are the 4 components of vocal massage. So when you come, we'll give you quite an extensive postural assessment to see how you're standing. Do you have a pelvis that's twisted, which is affecting the lower abdominal muscles, which will affect how you are supporting the sound with the breath flow. We give you a massage and myofascial release. I'll discuss what that means soon. And it's also a nice way to actually help you cope with the situation you're in, and as Judy was talking about, the loss that occurs in your life with this condition. And then I'll give you stretches, exercises, and some breathing exercises that you can take and do at home to help yourself. Okay, so here are the treatment principles. We're trying to reduce the tension around the larynx. Obviously, when you speak in an ideal vocal production, you would just be using lower abdominal breath and the 2 folds would be coming together nicely. When that doesn't happen, we tend to try and recruit muscles on the outside of the larynx to try and help, because there isn't enough breath pressure under the vocal folds to get them to vibrate. Also, once that's happened for a while, often the larynx will tend to rise up, and then it's a vicious cycle of the muscles getting tense, the voice gets more and more constricted, and again the larynx will go up. And you can end up with that curvative sound if you have throat tension and tongue tension. So when gently rubbed or kneaded, the muscles relax and become less painful. And the primary aim of the manual therapy is to relax the excessive tense musculature, which is inhibiting the phonation. I love this. This is one of my favourite cartoons. The trouble with our lives these days, we generally have our arms bored. Computers, driving, massaging, whatever. We shorten our pectoral muscles, and then all the fascia on the chest shortens and the head's pulled forward, the sternum depresses, and there I am, and this is the classic posture of depression because you can't get enough oxygen to feed the brain. So the more we collapse that sternum, the worse it is. You cannot have good breath control for your voice. But I mean, look around the world and we're all like this. So coupled with good exercise to try and strengthen these muscles between the shoulder blades, we need to try and get that sternum into that classic singing position. You think of Pavarotti, you know, with his handkerchief. We want this sort of 3-point, so you've got the sternum's not elevated, pushed up, but it's high. So I'm going to get you to do a few exercises today to help you with some ideas on posture, so be prepared to jump up and down. We'll go on to this. These are some of the strokes of myofascial release. So myofascial release is much more gentle than massage, it's slower than massage. We are looking at the fascial system of the body, the system of connective tissue. Each muscle is encased in a glad wrap bag, if you like, of fascia. You know when you're cutting up meat and you can sort of peel that silvery layer off, that's fascia. Within the muscles there are muscle fibres like sausages, they're individually wrapped with fascia. On top of all those bags you have a body stocking that goes over the head, down the body, under the feet, and it's never ending. And then all your tendons and ligaments are made up of fascia. So I went to a massage conference last year, and you know, you have a morning session, afternoon session. It was 2.5 days. We did one session on massage. The rest of the conference was on fascia, because they're realising now the importance that fascia has in the body. And they've even realised that, you know, if you go to the gym and you overdo it, 2 days later you're sore, it's not coming from the muscles, it's coming from the fascia. Recent discovery. So fascia is the new be-all and end-all. So these are some of the strokes. With fascia we want to sink into the tissue, and then we are gently and slowly heating with the heat of my hands and with friction, easing that fascial system. You'll be aware of the idea of the body stopping. You'll know if you hurt your toe and suddenly your shoulder's sore, because a pull will happen across the body stopping. Then we also have the rolling of the fascia. So again, separating that body stopping from where it might have adhered down to the spine or to the tissues underneath. So what is connective tissue or fascia? This is a really recent photograph they've managed to get. It's the closest they've ever managed to get in a fascia. So it's like a cobweb. So that is what is suspending all of your organs, surrounding all of your muscles and making up your tendons and ligaments. So it really is a cobweb through the body. And here are some of the muscles around the neck. I mean, as you can see, it's a pretty complex structure, isn't it? And we're going to talk more about this little fella here, which is called the hyoid bone. So the hyoid bone is a little fishbone sort of thing. It's soft, and it's one of only two bones in the body that don't connect to another bone. One's your kneecap, and one's this. So this is completely suspended in a cradle of muscles. So if there's any tension in the neck, the hyoid bone can be pulled out of place. The trouble with that is that there are some other very strong tiny muscles between the hyoid and the top of the larynx. So once that hyoid is pulled out of whack, then the larynx can go with it. And there's quite a few studies now that will show if the larynx is on a tilt or not sitting in the position it should be, in a free and neutral position, that the vocal folds inside won't actually come together properly. So, keep going. Okay, so here's the hyoid bone. So here's our first interactive moment. So if you put your hands up here, just under the jaw, slide down a bit, see if you can find two little bumps. And if you push one way, you should feel it come out the other side. Anyone feel that there? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's your hyoid bone. Anyone know they had a hyoid bone? So a great thing for you to do if there's tension in the front of the neck is to give that some mobilization. And another really good technique is to put 3 fingers down one side of the larynx, put your thumb on the opposite side of the hyoid and squeeze together. So we're literally releasing the muscles between the hyoid and the top of the larynx. It's easy to find the notch at the top of the larynx. And another really, really good one to do if your voice is tired, go find the notch, go across the top and down both sides of the larynx. And if you do that for 2 minutes, it is really restorative. And if you've ended up with a hoiked up larynx, that's a technical term in the opera world, this can be really restorative to get your voice back feeling comfortable, because the larynx is then back where it needs to be. So there we go, 2 little ones. So remember the hyoid, just pushing it side to side to mobilize it, and then across the top of the larynx, down the sides of the laryngeal muscles. Okay, so muscles used in voice production. So our key functions are respiration, and also we need to have that posture, as both Dan and Judy have said, and then we phonate from there. So the primary muscles are used. There are so many muscles used in voice production. There are 33 in total. And that's why, in my sense, I don't just look at here. We've got to look at the whole system. How is your body working? Is something twisted? Is something switched off? How are you feeding that breath? I came into massage because as a singer I kept having terrible tongue tension, and I had teacher after teacher of me pulling out my tongue and rolling my tongue. Nothing worked. And then I finally went to a body worker, and he said, oh, your pelvis is completely twisted. And what I'd done to compensate was I'd collapsed my shoulder down into that forward side. So I was basically working off one set of bellows. So when the body and the brain realise there's not enough subglottic pressure coming to the voice, it will recruit muscles around the larynx, which we don't want. So the 3 primary lots of muscles used are the diaphragm. I'm going to show you a nice video of how that works. The intercostals. Now, Do you think the lungs can move? They can't. They're just an organ. So if we're going to move the lungs, it happens by muscles pulling those ribs out. So the external intercostal muscles are the ones that lift the ribs to breathe in, and then actually they're not pulled back in generally, it's just the vacuum is formed as the muscles pull the ribs out, the diaphragm descends, a vacuum is formed, the air comes into the body, and then the ribs just go down by themselves. Unless you're a singer or someone who is speaking for a very long time and you're right at the end of the breath and you're going to keep talking, and so actually I need to get my internal rib muscles to keep pulling the ribs in so that I can get right to the end of the sentence. But for most people, we don't use those inside intercostal muscles. And then the abdominal muscles. So if everyone would like to just stand up, I'm going to show you why your abdominal muscles are involved in breath flow. So if everyone could just put their hands right down the bottom there and just go he. Can you feel that they work? So they were pushing the internal organs above the abdominal muscles were pushing, and they bump into the bottom of the diaphragm, and then the diaphragm pushes on the lungs like a hand under a balloon, and then the vocal folds vibrate, and that's what comes out. So just putting your hands there, breathing in, and as loud as you can, just do a little and keep going as long as you can. And at the end of the breath, you should feel that these come up and in. Can you feel that? So this is what we talk about. No, you can sit down and relax now. So this is what we talk about. Judy was explaining what happens when you use the high clavicular breath. That if we keep going like that, we're A, going to feel anxious, B, we start recruiting muscles around the larynx to try and raise the ribs. We want to have all your powerhouse way down here low in the abdominal breath. Okay, here's a couple of things you can do at home. So I mentioned there were those 3 lots of primary muscles, but then the other 30 are involved in posture and how the body's working. Here are 2. This is an easy one to find, the sternocleidomastoid. It's that big strap muscle there. You can't miss it. And if you're lying down and you put your head up, you'd see those 2 muscles come into play there. You can just pick that up, twist it and squeeze it. Yeah, and it's probably sore. Okay, so this muscle should be involved with turning the head, but because most of us have shortened our pectoral muscles by being like this all the time, often they're taking a part in actually holding the head up. So this is the importance of posture, to get the head realigned with the skeleton and turning these muscles off from doing a function they're not meant to do. And the other ones are the scalenes on the side of the neck. Now these attach into the 2 top ribs. So often I'll find with singers, if they're having problems with their voices, one rib has been yanked up because one side of their neck was tighter than the other. So then their whole rib cage is unbalanced. And that actually goes down and ends up affecting how the pelvis is sitting as well. So scalenes, put your hand under the side of your chair and take the pull up into your shoulders, so your shoulders locked down there. Take your opposite hand and turn your chin sort of at 45, and you should already be feeling something, and then try and just pull your head over gently. So your head's on an angle, your chin's angled at the 45. Now, most of you have got your chin up high enough, put your chin up a bit more. Now twist your head. Can you feel that? No, that's pretty good. Okay, so there's another 2 you can take home and do yourself. We're going to watch this video now on how you breathe. So this shows you the diaphragm at work. And I want you to watch how much the ribs expand.
When I'm feeling stressed, I know I can rely on Nutrilife Super B to give me the extra bounce I need. Plus, it's great for my nervous system and heart. Energy slumps no longer stump me with Nutrilife Super B.
Your lungs expand to bring in life's essential gas, oxygen, from the air. Expanded lungs naturally contract to expel the body's waste gas, carbon dioxide. Your lungs usually expand and contract in two main ways. One is an unconscious downward and upward movement of a thin muscle called the diaphragm, which separates the chest from the belly. The other way is by raising or lowering the ribs to increase or decrease the volume of the chest cavity. We breathe in or inhale when the diaphragm contracts. This pulls the lower part of the lungs downward. When we breathe out or exhale, the diaphragm and lungs relax and return to their resting positions. Quiet, deep belly breathing is a more consciously controlled breathing that, with practice, can become the standard way you breathe. Deep belly breathing aids the diaphragm muscle movement by expanding and contracting the abdomen, the area below the diaphragm. This allows the belly muscles to push stomach and diaphragm up, which forces out more carbon dioxide waste.
All right. So you can see it's a very, very big muscle, and it only has a few holes through the middle for the really important things like, main arteries and things like that. All right. The diaphragm is the second largest muscle in the body, and when it descends 3 to 5 centimetres. It completely bisects the body, and it's primarily a muscle of inspiration. It can't actually push the air out. So often when I was learning singing, I would have teachers say, use your diaphragm more. And now I know that was so unhelpful, because if you go to someone, use your diaphragm well, you think you should feel something happening here. And I imagined that meant that the diaphragm was pushing the air out. But in fact, when if you contract your bicep, it shortens. So it's doing that action. If you contract your diaphragm, it's doing that action. So when singing teachers said use your diaphragm more, that would actually mean I'd be pressing my diaphragm downwards. Really, really unhelpful. So singing muscles are your lower abdominal muscles. They literally bang things into the bottom of the diaphragm, and then we hold the ribs out, and that's what actually gives you the control of the air coming up out. So if you're just sitting there, put your hands on the sides of your ribs. Breathe out. Breathe in. Feel those ribs. Now I want you to go. Don't let your ribs collapse. Keep them out, keep them out, keep them out. Here you go. Now you can all sing opera. So that's it. So can you feel that you were in control of holding those ribs out? And could you feel how much your abdominal muscles were then choosing what sort of airflow you had? So if you wanted to let it all out at once, you'd go. If you want to go for a long, long time, you control the flow by holding the ribs out and then letting the lower abdominal muscles contract upwards and inwards. Okay, so here we are on types of breathing. So Judy talked about the clavicular breathing, where it's that high, anxious, panting sort of breath that we get when we're really, really stressed and unhappy generally. Thoracic breathing is when you're just using this part of your body to expand. So you're just breathing into the ribs and out. So try and see if you can first do the clavicular breathing. So you're going to tense everything up and try and just breathe in here and feel how that constricts your throat and how that makes you feel. Now try and move down and just move your ribs. Again, you can see that's not a full breath. Now breathe out, and now try and go right down to the belly. And feel like the breath is filling up right from that pubic bone upwards. Can you feel the difference in how that would take you into relaxation mode much more easily than breathing like this? A podgel, balanced breathing, is what we just practiced by controlling the flow of the air with the combination of the lower abdominal muscles pulling up and inwards and you holding the ribs out, not letting them collapse. I want to discuss a bit about the other role I see for my massage, and that's the role of nurture. Because to me, the experience of touch and having someone who's supporting you through your process is just as important as getting your posture sorted out, because you need somewhere to come where you can feel someone understands. I mean, voice is my life. I understand it. I've had many bouts of laryngitis and everything. I sang on laryngitis. Boy, did I get a lecture from Dr. Dan. I had no understudy. I was singing with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. I was singing Rachael. I had to sing. I did a top D and I felt something pop. That was my vocal hemorrhage. So off I trotted to Dr. Dan. Complete vocal rest for 2 weeks and I was fine, but yes, should have known better. So talking about stress in our bodies. Now, with dysphonia, often a client will present with shoulders that are up, with a lot of excessive tension around the larynx, and highly stressed because, as we know, the impact on your life is major. So some of the things that stress can do, which we're just starting to realise, it increases inflammation in the body, which when you're thinking of those 2 little vocal folds is pretty important. So being stressed actually contributes to the effect on our voice. So signs of stress: gut problems, skin problems, laryngeal pain, breathing difficulties, hoarseness. This can actually lead to dysphonia in some cases, but when you've got dysphonia, you're stressed and you're in that vicious cycle as well. And when we talk about stress, we think of, you know, the big stresses like moving house, getting divorced, babies, all that sort of stuff. But what they're finding with research, it's actually the day-to-day. When we're stressed, our body actually thinks we're being physically attacked. The brain doesn't distinguish between a lion coming at you and you trying to erase a presentation out on a computer. There is no difference. So what the body does is it switches off digestion. It switches off reproduction. It switches off the immune system. Anything your body doesn't need to run in that moment, it switches off. It turns on the adrenal glands, pumps out the cortisol, and pumps oxygen to the biggest muscles in the body for you to be able to run. So if you stay in a stressed state for 17 hours a day, you're not digesting, you can't get pregnant, it's an issue, and the immune system is suppressed. So when you're in relaxation mode, you're in rest, heal and digest. And that's why it's so important and why they're finding things like meditation, yoga, massage. Those 3 things, as well as sleep obviously, will switch the adrenal glands off. And they're about it. So putting some form of relaxation techniques or things like yoga and massage and stuff into your life is very, very important for all of us, but especially if you've got this. So fostering peace of mind, feeling of well-being, improves the ability to monitor stress signals and respond appropriately, calm thinking, and satisfies the need for caring, nurturing touch. And I thought this was a lovely little quote. The strongest words can be said in the softest voices and still be resonant. So there was one more little exercise I was going to get us to do. Does everyone mind just standing up again? So this is a great way to get a good posture happening. So what I'm going to get you to do is bend forward with unlocked knees, and we're going to go right over and you're going to take a nice breath, and each time you breathe in you're going to come up slowly, 1 vertebra at a time, and then once you get to here you're going to let your head just float up and see how you feel with your posture, and it's different to how you're standing now. So everybody bend over, take a breath in, and with each breath in and out, just come up a little bit at a time. And when you get to the top and you're straight, then let your head float up like a balloon. And now to finish, you're going to raise your arms and put them down. Now you should feel different because what we've done is we've put the sternum into the perfect position for vocal production. So if you're feeling like you're getting to the end of the day and you're like that, even that will bring that rib cage, and I'm not hoiking it up or anything like that, it's just in a nice, neutral, high position. So when you're depressed, and this is depressed there as well, you cannot control the breath. So try that breathing exercise we did before, hands on the sides of the ribs, breathing in, and do that. Now collapse the sternum. See what happens? So you cannot support your voice if you are collapsed like this between the shoulders. So doing that will start your day, or every hour, whatever you need to do, to think, okay, how am I breathing? Have I actually got a good enough posture that I can control the sound? And that's about all I have to say. Any questions? You can sit down.